Hello and welcome to the CBB edition of the Super Show. I am your host, Walter Waddell, aka Dub Deuces 85, and I am going to be covering college basketball DFS for you, talking a little prize picks, maybe even a little bets. I'm feeling kind of good about myself. I had a nice little 5-leg parlay put together tonight. Had a few sweats with my Wyoming money line, and what was the other one? Cleveland State. They were +2, and they had a very bad start, but they came through for me. So I'm feeling pretty excited about the little 5-legger that I hit. So we're going to talk about a little bit of everything. It's Friday night. I'm feeling good since the last time you guys saw me on the show. Struggling midway through. I'm actually feeling a lot better. My sickness has gone away, and hopefully it'll stay away. And, winning has definitely helped with that as well. We have a nice slate that we're going to talk about. DraftKings wise, mainly, as you guys know. Those of you who are FanDuel guys, if you're watching live, I appreciate it, and you have any FanDuel related questions, I will certainly try to answer those for you as I go. Otherwise, I'm primarily going to be talking about the 12-game main slate. As far as FTN goes, if you're not a member already, you see the ticker on the bottom there. It is 20% off if you use my code DUB for Dub. That is every single month of your subscription for the remainder of January, February, March, into April for March Madness. Lots of good stuff going on. We cover every single slate. We have Discord discussions. We post starters in there, late breaking news. We have PrizePicks trackers. We have bet trackers. We have everything you could possibly need, 20% off. Get over there and get that. For tomorrow / today, depending on when you're watching this, I am going to have an article for the main slate as usual. And I know the last couple of Saturdays, I've not really been around after the morning time. I'm going to try to be visible, but if I can't, no fear. I am going to have a write-up for the afternoon slate as well, more of a core plays piece, highlighting a few of my favorite plays. And I'm also going to do that for the night slate too. So I'll be up tonight writing 3 different slates up for you guys. Just, feeling good. Well, I've got something on Sunday, so I'm not really going to be around much on Sunday. I have a family gathering, so I am here. I am ready. I'm going to be taking care of you guys tomorrow with 3 different write-ups. All right, let's go. If you're watching live, again, thank you. Pop your questions, comments, concerns. You just want to say hello into the YouTube chat there, and I will look at those periodically throughout as we go game by game. I do have my child. Give me 1 second. You can probably still hear me. I have my child coloring right now, so she should be good and entertained, which is a good thing. And if she does interrupt, then you know what? We'll just ask her for who her plays are, because during college football season, she had the touchdown play. Maybe she'll have her own version of the posh play. All right, cool. Let's see what we got going on. Yeah. Cool. All right, cool. People rolling in, so appreciate it. Hello. Make sure I need a haircut bad, so I got to make sure and check I don't got a piece of hair hanging out or anything. All right, let's get it. A lot of good comments for last show too. I do appreciate it. I had 2 new subs who said that they really enjoyed the show first time seeing it. So thank you very much. That is the favorite part of content for me. No grifts here. I play who I say I'm going to play, just so you guys know. All right, let's dive in. First game on the slate, Duke versus Louisville. Louisville, an absolute train wreck of a season. Coach Mack has been scuttled right out the door, as a guy who was so good at Xavier and did such a great job getting that team to the tournament. He really struggled to, get his guys to buy in. And it was clear that he lost the team this year. Just nothing good about it. So Louisville going into it with an interim coach against Duke. That's tough. It is a -6 spread for Duke, 140.5 over under. I do think Duke probably covers quite easily. I really don't see how Louisville can keep this close. We do know that Duke is a fantasy friendly unit. We have talked about this every time we've had a show, every time we have a write-up, every time we have a Discord discussion. We have mentioned how Duke gives up a plethora of fantasy points to their opponents. So there likely will be somebody who comes out of this Louisville side smashing, but DK has priced up several of their, the Faulkners, West, Jared West. They're all in the mid-5s now, not 3.2, 3.3, where I would have maybe been interested. Certainly not interested in the mid-5s. So even though I think somebody will come out of this Louisville side, with making value, I think they're just GPP only. Tempo-wise, Duke 121, Louisville 145. Let's see. On the Duke side, obviously Paolo Banchero is a guy that you want to consider at 9-2. Value on this slate is going to be a little more sparse than we've had pretty much the whole season. We've seen pricing start to really tighten quite a bit. And with that, we've seen the, 218, 211, 220s, cash and cash highly, which is what we're accustomed to over the last couple of years. Whereas to start this season, because pricing's been so bad, you need a damn near a 250 to 260 just to get your foot in the door for a min cash, which really to me isn't that fun. I don't know about you guys, but those video game slates, they're fun once in a while. Fridays are like today is fun to have that. But when we're grinding our day in and day out, I don't really like those. So salary value wise has been kind of tighter, and I like that. And I do think it'll be probably a little bit tougher for people to just go up and say, I'm going to play Paolo at 9-2. Obviously a good place to start. He's one of the better pay-ups typically on the slate. He's rarely going to go below 32 fantasy points. He doesn't necessarily pop off for 40 to 50s very often, although he has the last couple of games put up some 40s, which is solid. I could certainly see him do that. 27% shot rate, 28% usage rate, 21% defensive rebounding rate, 3% block rate, draws 5.5 fouls per 40. He will certainly be a problem for Louisville. I do think we'll see relatively chalky play in AJ Griffin. His price has dropped down to 4.9 after he was up above 5K for the last couple of slates. He had a relatively tough game last time out, and a few players really did for Duke, even though they did end up beating Clemson. My Clemson boys gave him a run for their money. Covered that 11.5. That's something we talked about. Griffin had a bad game, though. In 22 minutes, just 10 fantasy points. He's 2 of his last 5. He has scored over 20. But 3 of his last 4, he's been under 20. So struggling a little bit, which has caused his price tag to go back under 5K. I do think he's viable if you want Duke exposure here, even though they are on the road. I just think Louisville is a miss, and he would probably be the most viable for me. If Trevor Keels is out again, sounds like he's a true game time decision at best, likely doubtful from what I've seen on the message boards. I did take time, at the end of my work shift today, I was doing research on the slate. I'm sure my boss loves that. And it did sound like Keels was likely not going to play. So you do have Jeremy Roach there at 5-1. Price is up 1K from last time out. Back-to-back games of 23 plus fantasy points. I'm okay with it. If he's going to be chalky, though, I'm really not okay with it, because Roach is one of those guys that, for whatever reason, when he has ownership, he just doesn't get it done. So be advised, I would rather play Griffin myself, but Roach is okay if you want to go there. Wendell Moore at 7-6 is interesting. He was 7-3 last time out. He was super chalk, played 40 minutes against Clemson. Clemson just doesn't get the recognition they deserve from the rest of the industry, that their defense is equipped enough to really slow teams down and give people problems. And they gave a lot of the Duke guys problems, especially Wendell Moore. He ended up, 4 for 10, shot 10 times, had 5 rebounds, 13 points. It was an okay game for him, 25 fantasy points, but he was super chalky because of his low price. So the price tag is now 7,600. That's my kid in the back. He's probably going to draw some ownership, because I think people are going to talk him up again. Oh, he can't possibly bust again a second time in a row. So I do think we'll see some ownership here. Obviously a much better matchup for him. He did just go off against Syracuse for 40 right before that, but he's had some pretty tough matchups. And Wendell Moore, over the history of his career, has been a really up and down player. He'll have these streaks. He's very streaky, 3 or 4 games in a row, 30 plus fantasy points. And then he'll go on a streak where he's putting up, 15 to 20. So this is something that Wendell Moore does. He's ready to start another hot streak. And if you want to be ahead of the curve on that, maybe this is the time to go back at him. He does play the most minutes on the team. We know he's going to be on the floor a lot, especially if Keels can't go. So I don't mind the play, but he's just, for me, he's not a main team player. As far as like the Mania Q goes and stuff, if he's going to be super chalky, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to play him. He's not that guy, for me at least. And then Mark Williams at 7-8. It's really tough for me to get behind playing him. He is playing more minutes. He's playing much better. He's producing at a high level on the glass. He's blocking shots. He had a game just a few weeks ago against NC State with 8 blocks. This is the Mark Williams that we expect to see, the Mark Williams that we want to see, the Mark Williams that the DFS community loves. But I know the second that I buy back in on him and play him in my main lineup, it's Coach K is going to inexplicably give him 13 minutes and he's going to have 12 fantasy points. And I'm going to be extraordinarily pissed off, right? So the price tag's nice at 7.8, especially when he was almost 9K last time out, which is a ludicrous price. So he's playable. I would actually probably prefer to play him over Wendell Moore, but I'm not confident. I'm not comfortable. I'm not looking to really get him into my build. Just, it's an early morning game. I just would hate to go Mark Williams and then watch him bust, and then the rest of the slate, I'm just pissed, right? So for me, AJ Griffin or Paolo Banchero, that's really where my head's at. On the Louisville side, I did mention that the prices were up for guys like Matt Cross, Jared West, Mason Faulkner. All these guys have been damn near min price for the last couple of weeks. Faulkner has had 20 plus fantasy points in 2 of his last 3. Now that they've priced him up 2K to 5.5, I think we can safely avoid him. And then Jared West would be the one that I'd probably have the most interest in. But the fact that he's 5'3" really kind of hurts it as well. Back-to-back games of 20 fantasy points. Him and Faulkner have been carrying a load, while everybody else, including my guy, Young KD, if you're new to watching me and you don't know who that is, it's Malik Williams. Announcers his freshman year started calling him that. It picked it up and I ran with it. But he really hasn't been playing all that well. He's clearly affected by this coaching stuff that's going on, the team lack of team unity. During post-game, press conferences, they're talking to him and he doesn't know what to say and he has no comment. And it's very clearly that this is bothering him. So it's really unfortunate because he's a really good player. So I hope that now that they're past Mac, that he can get back to kicking some ass. As far as anyone else on Louisville, not really. LLS at 3.9, I guess would be interesting if he starts. Jalen Withers last year was kind of a semi-stud at times. He's fallen off. They can't settle on a rotation. I'm hoping with the interim coach that maybe they do settle on an actual rotation that they can all agree on. And guys can get 20 to 25 minutes pretty consistently and cut that rotation down to like 8 players instead of, 11 to 12. So Louisville, it's just not a spot that I feel like I want to target for my main build. That's for sure. If you're running multiple lineups, then by all means, definitely consider that, but it's a really bad spot otherwise. Miami versus Georgia Tech. Have Miami minus 2.5, an over-under of 145. Miami's 158 tempo ranking, Georgia Tech right next to them at 159. Interesting spot because Georgia Tech, the DVP against Georgia Tech is in the interior. They have big men or bodies who are large, I should say, but not necessarily athletic or skilled big men. They have Jordan, they have Jordan Usher, who's, more of a wing, Michael Devo, who kind of, runs the 2 for them. Those guys are both their main players, and they have a couple of decent guards. And then they have, Zaba Kiguberia at 7'1". It's kind of just a body out there. And then who else do they start out there? Rodney Howard at 6'10", 6'11", 245. He's just a body. So athletic bigs have been able to crush them. So typically that's what we want to target against Georgia Tech. When we have Miami on the slate, we want to target against them. We want to use bigs, athletic bigs. So Georgia Tech doesn't have athletic bigs. Miami doesn't really have athletic bigs. So neither team's going to be able to take advantage of the DVP that you typically want to target against, which is kind of unfortunate. If Miami would actually play our guy Anthony Walker once in a while, I think he would do some serious damage in this matchup, but he's just not getting the minutes right now. When he's on the floor, you might notice last game, he had a 25% usage rate in only 12 minutes. Back against Duke in 12 minutes, he had a 31% usage rate. So give the kid minutes and let him work. The industry is usually split when Miami's on the slate. Like half the people, I should say a quarter of the people are on Charlie Moore, a quarter on McGusty, and then a quarter on Isaiah Wong. I don't really like any of them. McGusty has been the best of the season. His price is back up accordingly now. He's 8.5. Kind of tough to get behind that. I think he could certainly do damage here against Georgia Tech, but I just think that the slate's far too big. And if I'm going to spend, an 8.5, 9K price tag, I maybe want to lean towards somebody at home, and I want to lean towards somebody with a positive, DVP spot where I think they can take advantage of it. He'll probably get 32 fantasy points and not kill your lineup, but in a large field tournament, you're going to need much more, of course. Charlie Moore at 7.2. I'm still out on him. He could very well end up doing well, but it's still Charlie Moore of the last couple of years, and I just am not prepared to use him in my main build just yet. My favorite player on Miami for DFS purposes, I don't really have a favorite, that I watch the team and share them on, is Jordan Miller at 5.7. That price is too cheap. If you do want Miami exposure, he's the kind of the fourth wheel, so he gets ignored a lot. He is coming off of 36 against Virginia Tech, was quite impressive, and he has been playing over 30 minutes in 5 of his last 6 games. The FSU game on the 22nd, he was in foul trouble, so he only played 23. He has been under 20 fantasy points in 2 of his last 3 as well, which will keep his ownership down. But you'll notice he's been priced up around mid-6s, for the last week or so. So this is about where he probably should be in terms of price, but he's a guy that fills it up in each category. He's not going to be a big-time scorer, probably have like 6 real, but he's going to add, steals. He's going to add blocks. He's going to drop dimes. He's going to rebound. He's going to do a little bit of everything. So I think at 5'7", Jordan Miller is worth some consideration within your build. On Georgia Tech, really the only 2 consistently viable, let me put it that way, options would be Jordan Usher, who is, I think, priced out right now at 8.4. It's a little tough to get behind him at that price tag. And then Michael Devo at 8.2, who I can get behind at that price tag. Devo is a usage monster, a quite consistent option. He's another one of those guys, though, when he's been chalk over the years, he kind of shits the bed. Playing 82% of the minutes, has a 27.3% usage rate, a 28.6% shot rate. He's shooting about 38% from long range, 20% assist rate, and almost a 3% steal rate. And then you have Usher right behind him, 26% shot rate, 25% usage rate. So those are the 2 seniors that are going to control things, do the most damage. But with Devo being 200 less than Usher and a much more consistent option, he's going to do some damage. Although don't write off Usher for like GPPs because he does rebound, and I could see him probably putting up a pretty big rebounding number if he decides he wants to play in the paint. With Devo, we know he's going to take, double-digit shots. He's going to play 35-plus minutes. He's probably going to coast into a 30 fantasy point floor. It's just a matter of, how much more over the top will he get. Will this be a game he takes 20-plus shots like against Wake Forest, or is he going to be held to 5 like against North Carolina? I tend to lean towards the Wake Forest game where he took 21 shots. So Devo, circle him. 2 games in, Devo is a main team play. Not sure he's going to be my core just yet, but I would expect to see a pretty heavy ownership on Devo at that price point. And then everyone else, like Devin Smith at 3.4 is kind of interesting. I'm never playing Rodney Howard, so at 3.2, I don't care. He's out for me. Cal Sturdivant at 4.4, Khalid Moore at 4.1, Dallin Coleman at 3.9. There's a bunch of different value guys, especially with Bubba Parham never getting healthy. I think Smith is probably the most viable value at 3.4. If you're really hell-bent on studs and scrubs build, I would be okay with it, I suppose. Let's see. Georgetown versus Butler. We have Butler -6, 140.5 over under. Georgetown 39th tempo ranking, Butler 334th. A clash of styles. We know Georgetown is a very fantasy-friendly unit. We don't get them on the slate as much as especially on weekends as other teams, just because they're usually involved in games where they're going to get their teeth kicked in. And we tend not to get, those types of games. Whatever reason, DK just doesn't put them on the slate as much. They did play Butler back on the 13th of this month. They lost 72-58. Those of you who grind every day may remember that as the game where they were without several of their players. Dante Harris was out for Georgetown. Who else was out? Donald Carey was out. So that was the game where, against my better judgment and because of the pricing and how cheap Georgetown was, we ended up with a bunch of Georgetown stacks, and we know how that turned out. Caden Rice sucked. Colin Holloway was relatively just not that good. 11 points, 2 boards. The play was actually Tyler Beard, who I did have in that one, and that worked out good. He had 15, 4, and 5. But everybody else was quite bad. And Muhammad was especially bad as chalk. It ended up being him and Timothy Ighofe who did the most damage. So with Beard, he's not a play, obviously, because they're getting healthy. They have their guys, Harris and Carey. So I don't have really any interest in the Georgetown guys. This is, quite a bad spot for them. I do think the price tag of 5.7 for Dante Harris is pretty intriguing, just because he's a kid who should be probably priced in the mid 6Ks. So it's definitely an okay price. And then I'm going to be curious about the Aminu Mohammed, ownership at 6.8. He's always super chalky under 7K. He's right on that line towing it. And I just think that this is a spot where I think we can do better with our salary. So I'm going to let everybody else kind of go that direction. For Butler, Bo Hodges has been a man, the stud. This is exactly the same as last year with Bo Hodges to a T, right? So, he got eligible after transferring. This was last year. Was underpriced, 3K, 4K, whatever. He just lit the world on fire going off, putting up 30, 40 spots for quite a few games. And then his price leveled off, and then he kind of fell off for a bit, and then that was that. Same exact thing this year. Comes into it, gets healthy, 3K, just blasts off, destroys the slate. Then he does it again just a few days ago. And you guys can thank me for tilting him because I got him there. He had such a bad start to the game, and then he ended up with 34 at 5-1. And now he's priced up to 6.5. So back-to-back games over 30 fantasy points, 6.5. The price tag starting to go up. We will still see a lot of ownership on him. I would love to be able to now get off that Bo Hodges chalk, but the problem is he's facing Georgetown, not like, a lockdown unit. He's not facing, a Villanova or a Providence or a really bad game environment. He has a really good game environment where he's pretty much going to be just dragging his for lack of a better term, his sack all over Georgetown. So I think at 6.5, we're definitely going to want to consider him quite a lot in our cash games and single entry if you're going to max enter or play a large field or even play the Mania queue, you'll definitely want to consider, a fade, because I think even on a 12-game slate, we might see something stupid like 50% or more on him. That's just where we're at right now, unfortunately. He does have a 25% shot rate, a 24% usage rate. His defensive rebounding rate is astonishing, 25.5%, 3% block rate, a 4.5% steal rate, draws about 3.5 fouls per 40. So pretty close with his numbers last year, except his defensive rebounding number is up, but his blocks are about the same. His steals are way up so far as well through the first 6 games. You guys remember he played about 9-10 games last year for Butler when he got eligible. So he's your main play. Basically against Georgetown, you can take anyone and feel good about it. However, this is Butler. They're not the most consistent team. I would like to use a big, someone like Bryce Enzi. Like, this would be an amazing spot to use a 2% Bryce Enzi and watch him go for 30 plus at 5.3. Will I be brave enough to pull the trigger on him? Maybe not. But he's definitely his player prototype is what kills Georgetown. So looking at what he did against them last year, he struggled in one game and then he did really good in the other. So we don't have a lot to go on based off of that, but bigs have been tearing up Georgetown. As far as his rates go, he has an 8.5% offensive rebounding rate, strong, and a 3% block rate. Hard to trust though. Chuck Harris, 30% shot rate, 25.5% usage rate. He's probably the direct pivot off of Bo Hodges, 5'9", just a few hundred less. Harris he's been starting again. He's taking shots. He looks a lot more confident. He went through a very strange sophomoric slump, which we see we see this a lot with Darian Seabrun with NC State. He's taken off and been crazy as a sophomore, but you typically in college see these guys go through those sophomore slumps. And that's what happened with Chuck Harris. But his last 3 games, solidly over 20 fantasy points. He doesn't do a lot of secondary stats, so he's really reliant on scoring, which does give me a slight pause about paying almost 6K for him. Would rather probably just pay the Hodges, but if he gets hot, there's no telling he could outscore Hodges. He took 19 shots against Providence, 15 against Creighton in his last 2 games. So he has the green light to chuck away. And then you have Aaron Thompson there at 5.5. I'm probably out on him as well. So play Hodges, feel good about it. Now let's go to a game featuring a team that I love. I have a couple of teams just randomly that I like a lot, like UAB, my Quinnipiac boys, and Tulane. Tulane's a team that I really like. They were on the night slate the other day. Tulane's stacks were huge. They scored almost 100 points against Tulsa. And guys like Kevin Cross, who I love, played really well. Jalen Forbes, Jaylen Cook. So I'm definitely going to have interest in this game just because I have my guys, #Waltz guys. Right now, Wichita State versus Tulane. It's Wichita State -1, over under of 137.5. I definitely like taking the Tulane side of that at +1. 177 tempo ranking for them. Wichita State 180. So let's start with Tulane, because if you guys aren't familiar with them, Kevin Cross at 6'8" is a pretty strong play, I'd say. And I don't think he'll have any ownership. He is a guy that's definitely going to be approaching that posh play status. They did play Wichita State just a few weeks ago. We're in conference play, so we're going to see this. They won 68-67. In that game, Kevin Cross had 10 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals. So kind of a moderate game. It was an early foul trouble, so he only played 22 minutes. I would expect him to play closer to 30 this time. Jaylen Cook had 18 points, 5 assists, and Jalen Forbes had 20.7 rebounds and an assist. So the main 3 contributors all played pretty well. And then Tyson Etienne, if you go that route, he had 20 points. Craig Porter had 18, 9, 4 steals and a block. That was the explosion game for Craig Porter, you guys may remember. As far as rates go, Kevin Cross has a 28% usage rate, second on the team, 26.2% shot rate, a defensive rebounding rate of 22.5%, an assist rate of 28.5%, which is actually highest on the team. You got the big fella there, dropping dimes, 4.5% block rate, drawing almost 5 fouls per 40. However, he does get 5 fouls per 40 as well. So you do have that issue with him at times, but he is a very good stat sheet stuffer. He kind of quietly at times puts up 30 plus fantasy points. I have him in a couple of my season long leagues, and I'll throw him into my lineup, each period. And then I'll look at the stat line and I'll think, it just was a moderate game, but then you add it up and all of a sudden he's at 34. So he's definitely a guy I like here. Jaylen Cook, the LSU transfer, 28.6% usage rate, 29.7% shot rate. He has settled in with his Tulane team, taken over as their primary alpha on the perimeter. 23.5% assist rate, draws 4.5 fouls per 40, shooting 42% from long range. Just think this LSU team, who is having a lot of difficulties of staying healthy on the perimeter, having some inconsistency from their young guys, although Brandon Murray is starting to come around. If they had Jaylen Cook, this version of Jaylen Cook on their team now, good Lord. Will Wade did not have the bag, I guess, for him, though. It's not the American gangster when it comes to Jaylen Cook. And then Jalen Forbes playing almost 90% of the team's minutes. He's going to be on the floor for a long time. Rates-wise, pretty solid, 22.6% usage rate, 23.6% shot rate. Rebounding is just kind of moderate, shooting 38% from long range. He's just a true scorer, a kid that can really fill it up quite quickly for Tulane. So, but you're going to have to pay for him. 7.3, Jaylen Cook's 8K, Kevin Cross 6.8. So their prices were a little more appealing last time. The opponent was a little more appealing as well. But I'm definitely going to have some ownership. This is just a team that I feel pretty confident in. And I could even see myself paying up to that 8K for Jaylen Cook as a guy that, and he's kind of his price point, his matchup, his skill set is a classic posh play. The JFL, obviously Posh Alexander, Cam Thomas. We love Cam Thomas. That price point where nobody would ever roster them because all he does is score, or he's not going to get it, but he just kept putting up 35 fantasy points. Jaylen Cook is exactly like Cam Thomas in that regard, price all the way down to price point. So do not sleep on Jaylen Cook. He is going to win us a Mania seat tomorrow if everything breaks right. So we'll see how the rest of the slate goes as we're talking about it, but Jaylen Cook is that dude. You have a couple value guys, RJ McGee, Zion James. I'm not really fooling around with secondary Tulane options. If it was like a really amazing matchup, then sure, but we're just going to keep our exposure to Forbes, Cross, and Cook in the order of them being my favorite plays. Cross, Cook, and Forbes in that order. Wichita, do you want to play Tyson Etienne? Do you want to play Tyson Etienne? I'm asking you as watching this, because something tells me you don't want to play him, but you're looking at that 5-6 price point, and you've probably at this point gone through the slate. You've built yourself a holder lineup. You have started to look at stats. You're waiting for the Super Show to start, and you come down and you got your last spot, and all of a sudden you got 6K left, and you're scrolling through, and Tyson Etienne's name comes up, and you're just saying, oh, please no, because who wants to play him, right? This would be an interesting spot to use him. The price point is good. He has legit 40-point upside. We know that. He has legit 7-point floor downside. We know that. So it's going to be difficult to really get behind him. I do not feel confident in him whatsoever in this matchup, even though it is a relatively a plus. And last time out against Tulane at home, he did have 26.5. That was 20 real, 3 assists. So 16 shot attempts. He took 13 threes, made 6 of them. He hasn't had any other games this month where he's made that many. He's had a lot of 1 for 11s and 2 for 8s and 1 for 9s from long range. So he's shooting well above what his capabilities usually are. With that being said, he's probably going to be chalky. So it makes it an easy GPP fade. But, in the cash games, and I know if my dear friend Pete from YFC was here, he would tell us, we only have to beat half the field in cash games, Walter. And he's right. He's right. So Etienne's probably a cash play. Not that excited about him. I would almost rather just find the salary and play Ricky Council, which I'm not going to at 7K. It's pretty tough. I know he's coming off of 46. This same Tulane team just like 2 weeks ago, he put up over 30. Council is definitely stepping up. This is going to be his team once Etienne, goes off into the sunset and finally goes pro. Council is a really talented player, and he's going to be doing some serious damage. He's probably going to be like an 8K guy when it's all said and done here in the next 2-3 seasons. 21.9% shot rate, 23.5% usage rate. His usage rate is right on par with Etienne. Etienne's shot rate's way higher at 29%, but their numbers are pretty similar. They shoot almost the same percentage from long range. Council does a better job drawing fouls. He has a better rebounding rate. Their assist rates are about the same. Their steal rates are about the same, and he's a better shot blocker. Overall, dare I say, Ricky Council is a better DFS option, but his price is way up there. So I guess I'm not telling you anything you don't know already. And then Craig Porter's up at 6'4". Porter has had he was really bad last year. He's a really high-end JUCO player. Transferred over. Things didn't work out last year. Very, had to learn the speed of D1. I get acclimated. And now he's playing really well. But they've priced him up out of play. If he would have been 4.9 or maybe even 5.2, 5.5, or maybe even Etienne's price, I think we'd be talking about him a lot more. Although, as somebody who is getting grotesquely, sick of all this chalk on large slates, I'm actually glad he's a little bit overpriced here because it means that we don't have to play him if we don't want to, and he's not going to be 70% owned. Then you have Dexter Dennis, who has shown flashes as being an alpha in the past, and then he's shown flashes of being a role player. He is playing really well, and he's doing it pretty quietly because nobody's really talking about him. And this whole season, he's had a bunch of games of 27, 29, 32, 28, 24. Some really solid numbers that he's just not getting the credit for. He's not getting his flowers, as they say. Rates-wise, 16% usage rate, not going to make anyone excited. 28% from long range, not going to make anyone excited. But he just does a little bit of everything, contributing in assists, rebounds, blocks, steals. Very gifted shot blocker at just 6'5", kind of a smaller wing. Very good at shot. He's got good timing, and he always comes away with a few blocks, it seems like, especially lately. So I think he's definitely viable. Maybe he's the direct pivot off of Etienne there in your GPPs. He's only 300 more. But I think this Wichita State guard roulette game is going to be quite tilting. And I do think that if you get it right, you're going to be probably top 3 in GPPs because it's going to be a very volatile situation. And then you have Morris Udeze. They're big. I probably wouldn't recommend using him. He's probably going to be getting himself into foul trouble, 5.5 fouls per 40. He is drawing 5 fouls per 40, so we just need our guy Kevin Cross to get him in foul trouble before he gets Cross in foul trouble, where we're at with it. All right, first 4 games in the books before we move to Michigan. Let's check in. All right, everybody's cool. We'll keep on plugging along here. By the way, I am going to start doing the in our Discord. We had a Posh Play bet. It's kind of like a version of the Posh Play, but in betting in Discord. And I got away from that for a while, and we're gonna do that as well because The last couple of days have been really good for me in betting, and I'm getting the bug. So we're gonna have a step up our betting content. But of course, we have the master of betting, Mike Kutry, as well, providing content. So lots of good stuff for those of you that are starting to dabble. Louisiana is now legal. You guys that are Louisiana residents, I posted a code earlier. There's a lot going on with that where you can get a deposit bonus up to $1,000. So if you're able to bet, definitely do so, because there is a lot of money to be made there. All right, Michigan versus Michigan State. This one, the Spartans are -3.5, 138 over under, 115 tempo ranking, Michigan 299. This is a game I'm intrigued by. I think I want some exposure to it. Where I want that exposure, I don't know just yet. With Michigan, their freshmen are the most intriguing to me. We're seeing, Musa Diabate, he kind of started the season really hot and he's cooled off a little bit, whereas Caleb Houston, the other highly ranked recruit that came in, he struggled starting out, and now he's really starting to heat up. So that's where most of my interest lies, and even with maybe even a little Frankie Collins, like not necessarily for DFS, but just guys I want to keep an eye on, and I want to get to them before they have the explosion game. Just like the stock market, we want to be playing these guys before everybody else realizes it. And that Houston explosion game is coming. You can tell just by watching him the last few games, he's on the verge of something very, very special. He's only 5'9". He had a 31 at the beginning of the month, I believe, against Rutgers. Rutgers. And then he had a 29 against Indiana recently, 25. He's hovering around that mid-20s, when earlier this season he was just a 10 to 15 fantasy point guy. Like, nobody gave him a second thought. But he was also priced about 7.5, 7.6 most of the season, which if he was priced that way now, I wouldn't even probably be talking about him. But the fact that he's now in that lower level, 6K, 5.9 range after spending 2 or 3 slates in the 4.9 to 5.2 range, he's certainly interesting. I think we definitely want to consider him here. He is a very high level scorer. In high school, he was an absolute machine, really gifted player. I see a lot of Jordan Poole in him, and I think he could actually be better than Jordan Poole at the collegiate level. I don't watch much NBA, so I can't speak for how Jordan Poole's playing with the Warriors right now. But I will say that I see a lot of him collegiately in Caleb Houston. So I'm interested in him at 5'9". Diabate at 5'4". I'm probably backing off simply because he's become a real foul risk lately. He's always had somewhat of a higher foul rate, but he didn't really get into much foul trouble, and that was in his 18 to 22 minutes. Now that he's being asked to play 28 to 35 minutes consistently, the foul rate has skyrocketed up. So I think where I'm at with Diabate at this point is on the road, I'm backing off a little bit in a matchup like this, and then at home I'll start considering him more. We had that game where I really got burnt, and I still stand by it. I know on the road against Illinois, tough spot. Kofi Coburn is a base god. I get it. But Dickinson out. I had to give Diabate a try at 5'7". He was only able to play 19 minutes because he was in foul trouble, but he had 9 points and 6 rebounds. So he wasn't a complete stiff in that 19 minutes. And if he would have been able to hit 30 minutes, he would have put up a big score. So with him right now, unless Dickinson were to be ruled out for whatever reason, I'm off of him and I'm looking at Houston mostly. Speaking of Dickinson, he's priced at 9K, which is a pretty tough price. You see, last time out against Northwestern, he was atrocious. He fouled out in 29 minutes. He had just 17 fantasy points coming off of back-to-back 40s. I will be interested to see where the industry falls on him once it's all said and done. I will not be using Hunter Dickinson probably anywhere, not even in my GPPs. With that being said, he'll probably be very low owned because he's priced at 9K. So that you multi-enter guys are looking for these buy low spots, buy low in terms of ownership, not price. You could certainly look at him. And then you have Devontae Jones at 5'7", Eli Brooks at 5'1". I do feel like they're always those prices, especially Eli Brooks. So it's not even like, oh, this is a great spot to target Eli Brooks. He's always at 5'1" to like 5'7", it seems like. I know he spent a couple of weeks at 6'2", but it seems like 5'7" is kind of like where he's at. So I think a lot of people are going to be talking about him for this slate at 5'1". I'm not really that interested. I think that at this point, if Juwan Howard wants to save their season, last year I was talking to somebody about this earlier. They went over expectations last year. This year they come into it. People have, legit second weekend beyond expectations for them. And they come in and they're kind of under expectations at this point. And I think right now, they know what they have with Eli Brooks. They know what they have with Devontae Jones. He was he was a really good player at Coastal Carolina. He's obviously struggling to a degree at the Big Ten level. Brooks is just kind of who he is. He's a kind of a role player that can score, not at all three levels, but when you need a bucket, he can get it at times. You need to see where your freshmen are, where you're at with your freshmen. Collins, maybe some Terrence Williams, Houston, they need to play these young guys. So that's kind of where my head's at with it. And I think Caleb Houston's the only one I really like. Now, I tweeted earlier before the show, very peculiar that the pricing algorithm for DK would do something like this. And this is where I wonder if are they playing around? Why are they pricing things like this? Because pricing has been getting better. Certain players, they're up over 9K, great, like they should be. Then you come over and you see Malik Hall is priced up to 6.8. And Malik Hall had a couple of nice games recently, 32 fantasy points against Wisconsin, 27 against Nebraska. Like he probably, shouldn't be priced at 4 or 5 like he's been, but to price him at 7K is quite laughable. He will be, 0.00091%. But then you come down and you see Marcus Bingham, who's coming off a 31 against Illinois. He's priced at 4.1, and his prices have been 8K a lot, which was laughable. And it seems like the Spartan team in particular, we saw it with Tyson Walker to start the season. He was priced at 8K, never played him. Now he's at 4.5, 4.7. He's playable. This Michigan State team, the algo seems to have trouble with them. So I think that we may see some pretty heavy ownership on Bingham. Do I think that he's a classic chalk value spot that's 4K that is going to be very tilting? Do I think he's going to get into foul trouble? Do I think that he is going to be under 4X? Do I think everybody's going to be irritated with him? Yes. The answer to all of those questions is yes. Do I think he's still in play? Unfortunately, the answer to that question is yes as well. I feel like it's a pretty rough spot because Michigan does have a good front court. Bingham's minutes could be anywhere from 12 to 35. And a lot of that is dependent on factors beyond him. Because we've seen it even with, him not in foul trouble, like against Northwestern, he played 12 minutes. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that he hasn't been effective in those games. So, and I missed out on some Malik Hall games at the 4.5, 4.7 price because especially against Wisconsin, I don't know how many of you were playing him against Wisconsin, but 4.5, he put up 32. He could very easily be putting up 12 in that same spot. So the minutes for these guys are all over the place. Izzo's just, he's a legendary coach. I can't speak ill of him, but the last couple of years for DFS purposes, Tom Izzo's a jerk. And it's really tough to get excited about any of their players. He does play everybody's favorite, especially Varnicus. Joey Hauser, his favorite player. He's guaranteed to play mid-20s minutes, but he's thankfully priced out, and we haven't seen Joey Hauser chalk since last year. Unfortunately, because fading Joey Hauser chalk is one of the easiest profitable moves you can do. So we do know he's going to play minutes. We know Hall's priced out. Gabe Brown, 6'1". He's kind of interesting. He's going to be playing minutes. We know that for sure. But this whole game is just going to be a tilt because I think that being confident in it is definitely nearly impossible. But what I am confident is that somebody's going to come out of this game on the optimal. And I think it's going to end up being somebody like a Max Christie or somebody like a Caleb Houston. It's going to be somebody that people aren't really expecting. So look for a lot of Marcus Bingham chalk at 4.1. And I'm not going to tell you to fade him. If he's going to play 25 minutes, he's a lock at that price. But I don't know that we can guarantee he's going to play 25 minutes, unfortunately. All right. In Missouri versus Iowa State, this is a game I am certainly intrigued by. Iowa State's minus 10.5. It's a lower total, 131. Both teams in the 200s for tempo ranking. Iowa State 206, Missouri 218. Missouri just pushed Auburn to the brink, the number one team in the country, nearly losing 55-54 against Auburn. So really ugly game that they were able to play there. I think we'll probably see a similarly ugly game here against Iowa State. However, they're going to be on the road. So the Cyclones I forgot to mention, it's the Big 12 SEC Challenge. So you're going to see a lot of Big 12 teams facing off against SEC teams all day. Going to be awesome. This is kind of a peculiar matchup. I do think the player that sticks out right away and I'm sure for everyone, is Isaiah Brockington at 7K. So I'm not going to pretend that I'm giving you a sneaky play. Brockington has been huge since coming over to the Cyclones. He's playing 84% of the team's minutes, 25% usage rate, 27.5% shot rate. His combined rebounding rate is pushing 30%. He is drawing 5 fouls per 40, and he's making just under 40% of his triples, which is a career high. During his time at Penn State, he was under 30%. We know his freshman season, I talked about it before, at St. Bonaventure, he was a 42% shooter. So he is a capable three-point shooter. He just didn't show it at Penn State, but he's showing it here with the Cyclones. Last time out, he had kind of for him a rough game, but he still put up 30 fantasy points, and he did that and that was against Oklahoma State, a very tough Oklahoma State that normally Isaac Likely shuts everybody down. Brockington scored 26 real, only 2 rebounds and assists, but still pushed 30 fantasy points because he took 20 shots. So we know he's going to take a high level of shots. If Missouri can keep this close at all, he's going to be asked to carry the load. That's just what he does. He even was shooting threes last game, which is something that we don't. I mean, his rates are up from long range, but he's taking way fewer. He shot 3 for 4 last game, and you see he's only making, or he hasn't made a 3 before last game since before, I think, early January. So it's not really his game. He's a big time driver. He generates points at the foul line. 7K is a really nice price when you consider earlier this month he was almost 9K. So I think he's going to be chalky. He is a guy that I'm going to definitely be on. He is as we're working through the slate here, core play number 1 for me at that 7K. Hodges, who was kind of right in that slot for me too, but I just don't want to be super chalky and lame like that. So Brockington is currently the number 1 member of our 3-man core that we are going to give you as we go. Tyrese Hunters' price has finally come to a level where it's going to be hard to consider him at 6'6". He's definitely going to be on the floor a lot, but that price tag of 5'3", 5'4" certainly was a lot more appealing. So I would just pay the $400 more to go to Brockington because we know he's going to, have the ball in his hands and do some damage actually scoring. You do have some value options here. Last game, Robert Jones started for Iowa State. He's 3'7". Played 15 minutes against Oklahoma State. Not really going to be a guy that is going to be shooting the ball much, if ever. Kind of like Ebby Doe from North Carolina State. Doesn't shoot, but block shots. He had 5 assists, 2 rebounds, a block, 2 steals, 2 points for 17.5 fantasy points. A decent score for a guy who was min price. So if you want a cheap guy who may be starting at 3'7", but consider the fact that he will have to be guarding at times Kobe Brown, and he's not really that appealing. You look and think, Charlie Daniels from Minnesota had to guard some guys above him. He got into foul trouble. He was horrible as a chalky value, and it's not really that appealing of a spot. So you could possibly look at a Tristan Enaruna at 3'3" or an Elijah Kunk at 3'2". Both kind of, interesting value guys if we think the minutes are going to be there. Kunk's played 20 plus minutes in 4 of his last 5. Not a very high FPPM guy, so I do have my concerns about him. He also doesn't shoot the ball very much, which is a concern. And then Enaruna, the Kansas transfer, he had a game like a week or 2 ago where he played 31 minutes against Texas Tech, but he's typically going to be between 11 to 19 minutes. Again, another guy that doesn't shoot the ball all that often. So there is value on this team, but I think I would just go take Brockington, not get cute, and move along, looking for some better value spots, because playing this ugly bad value is just not good for anyone. Unless you're super confident that you have a Chet Holmgren on your hands that's going to put up 40, 42, 45 fantasy points. It's getting to the point now where we need to consider balanced. Balanced is working, and that makes me very happy. Kobe Brown at 7'5", price coming down on him is interesting on the road. That has fouls written all over it. Travon Brazil, who has been a very nice value play throughout the season, he's lost a lot of his luster recently. He has been kind of figured out by opposing coaches. A couple weeks ago against Bama, he went off. Texas A&M, he went off, and it seemed like, there was no tape on this kid, and they didn't have any scouting reports, and he was kind of just free reign doing what he wants. Now it seems like he's been solved slightly. His price is just okay at the 4-1, so I think we can do better than him as well. And when it comes to taking the guards, Pickett, Coleman, Gordon, Amari Davis, that's also a very tilting proposition. I think at this point, I'm off Missouri. There's just really nothing there that I'm excited about. Moving on to the next game, Oklahoma versus Auburn, another game in the Big 12 SEC Challenge. This is one that is going to be a fun real life game, and it's going to have some DFS quality. We have Auburn minus 9.5, 137 over under. They're 89th in tempo ranking, Oklahoma 262. Coach Pearl has just been given, I believe, I could be wrong about the years, but I think it's an 8-year extension. So he's feeling good. He's partying it up right now, what Coach Pearl does, and they're going to be coming into this game with a lot of, gusto and feeling good about themselves. So coming off that really disgusting, disturbing, ugly game against Missouri where they had to really grind it out, Jabari Smith, who we were all on, kind of struggled. I think that they'll come back and they'll bounce back and play well. Even though Oklahoma with Coach Porter Moser has a great defense, I think Auburn's going to be able to do some damage here. So starting with Auburn, I think we need to, I'm not going to say for sure play, but we definitely need to consider Jabari Smith again. He was pretty heavily owned last slate. His price of $7K was very appealing. This is a spot where everybody in the industry is going to jump off, and this would be exactly a type of spot from a game theory standpoint, leverage, whatever you want to call it, where he's going to go off. The matchup isn't necessarily the best on paper. Points-wise, it may be one of the lower scoring games Auburn's had in a while. However, they just came off of that 55-54 clunker of a game, so I think they'll score more than that. Oklahoma does have a top 20 defense. Keep that in mind. Rebounding wise, they're a decent defensive rebounding team. Offensive rebounding, they're terrible. They get the ball stolen from them a lot. When they do turn it over, it's mostly from steals. And then they're a pretty quality shooting team inside the arc. So they get a lot of quality looks from 2-point field goals. Auburn likes to push the pace. We know that. They like to get out in transition. Oklahoma would prefer not to get out in transition. So whoever is able to win out in that part of the game is going to do some damage. So I think that we'll see Walker Kessler probably do a fair amount of damage on the glass, especially on the defensive side. Jabari Smith doesn't get a lot of credit for his rebounding ability because they do have Kessler. Jabari Smith does have nearly the same defensive rebounding rate as of Walker Kessler at 23%, block rate of 4.5%, a steal rate of 2.7%. His shot rate's 27.5%, and his usage rate is 25.1%. Jabari Smith is likely going to be number 1, number 2 pick in the draft. To further kind of cement his unicorn status, maybe over Chet Holmgren even, at 6'10", he's making 41% of his threes on 103 attempts. So kid can shoot quality shots. He can get to the rim. He can draw fouls. He's drawing about 4.3 fouls per 40. He can rebound. So I haven't decided yet if he's going to make it into my main build. You'll see he was struggling, shot 2 for 15 against Missouri, but still was able to score over 20 fantasy points, which obviously wasn't value, but it wasn't 5, it wasn't 10, it wasn't that bad. He still had 10 rebounds and assists, 2 blocks. And so if you can score mid-20s fantasy points on 2 for 15 shooting, that has to let you guys know that we're dealing with a very, otherworldly talent that has a lot of upside at this 7.4 price point. The main issue with him and what everybody worries about is the fact that Pearl will typically play in mid-20s minutes. But we did mention prior to the Missouri game that in close games, Pearl has started to play him over 30 minutes. Now, we didn't expect Missouri game to be close, so we thought his minutes would be under. But clearly you saw with that being close, he played 32 minutes. So if we think that Oklahoma keeps this close, I would expect Jabari Smith to play between 28 and 33-ish minutes. I know it's kind of a wider gap, but at 7.4, I'm comfortable with him. And then you have Walker Kessler at 8.9. It's kind of tough to get to that price right now. And then Wendell Green, who's just going to be a stud for the next couple seasons because I don't think he's going to go pro right away at 8.3. He actually has the highest usage rate on the team, talking about Wendell Green at 26.9%. Really fun player to watch. So is KD Johnson. they just have a lot of different weapons that can score. Katie Johnson at 6'4" is definitely an okay play if you want to go there, but I think it's Jabari Smith. And then if you want to go back to Alan Flanagan, my man Flanny, he let us down last slate, but it's important to really worry or focus or fester less about the fact that he only had 12 fantasy points and more on the fact that he played 28 minutes. And the game before that, he played 29 minutes. The game before that, he played 30 minutes. The game before that, okay, so he is healthy, which is good. We're happy to see a healthy Flanny. His turnover rate has risen again because there's been some situations where he's had to run the offense. And we know from last year that Flanny is not the guy that you want to be initiating the offense. He's much better off the ball because of his turnover rate being so high. He's also struggled to adapt a little bit with the play style of having a quality big like Walker Kessler, who's different than the bigs they had last year, and Jabari Smith, who is a unicorn. So I still think he's in play at this price just because the minutes are going to be there. He's going to have very low ownership. I certainly don't think that this is the time for an Auburn mini stack. So if you're not wanting to go up to Jabari Smith, I think you certainly would want to consider Flanagan. This will be a hard-fought game on the perimeter, dealing with guys like Goldwire. He's a veteran. I think that we could see him kind of excel a little more on the glass than usual and maybe rack up a few steals or secondary stats like that, So at 4-2, I'm still interested in Flanagan. And I think that at 30 minutes, you got to consider a guy that's under 5K. For Oklahoma, targeting guys against the Auburn team hasn't really been that profitable this year. I know at times there have been some scores that have come out of there, but targeting against them is usually not what you want to do. Prices on Oklahoma guys are all pretty fair. Jordan Goldwire at 6K is a no. Maja Gibson at 6'3" is a no. Tanner Groves at 6'6" is a maybe in a good matchup. But against Auburn in a front court that's going to completely muscle him around, that's a no. There's not a lot to like here. Price-wise, everything's fair. Jalen Hill at 6'1", that's going to be tough to really get behind. Elijah Harkless at 5'8", that's going to be tough to get behind. So I don't have any interest in Oklahoma. I think that they'll be balanced anyways, and if they do keep this close, it'd be a bunch of like 2.5, 3x value returns on most of these guys. I see now looking at Oklahoma's team page, Elijah Harkless played 4 minutes last game. So we'll have to investigate what that was about. It looks like, so I didn't watch that game. Jacob Groves got some additional minutes. So that's interesting. Groves played 26 minutes. We know from last year, if you guys were sickos like me and watched Eastern Washington, the Groves brothers both did some good things. So Jacob Groves started against West Virginia last time out, 26 minutes. If he were to start at 3-2 against Auburn, I suppose you could consider him, but he's kind of a lower level value, and that's really with your pay-ups, you're hoping for that 40-50 burger. So Jacob Groves at 3-2 if he starts, and we get some clarity on what the deal with Harkless is, I don't mind it. All right, next game is NC State versus UNC. This is going to be Stack City. We're going to see a lot of ownership on this game. We do have UNC -8, an over-under of 150. So a lot of points going to be scored here. UNC has a Temple ranking of 42, NC State 213. You guys know, and I've harped on it, NC State, obviously Manny Bates, losing him was a heartbreaker for them. What do we want to target against NC State? Bigs. So North Carolina has a pretty premium high-end front court player. You guys might not be familiar with him. It's his third season. Armando Bacot, really, really strong season that he's having. And he's the type of kid that is probably going to stay even one more. I don't think he'll enter the draft because he doesn't really project that high anyway. So he's that prototypical 4-year college guy that's just going to put up big numbers like Tyler Hansbrough. Really strong rates, 26% usage rate, 25% shot rate. Where we're looking at here, his rebounding rate. Defensive rebounding rate's 9th best in the country at 30%. That's just unfathomably high. And then a 14.5% offensive rebounding rate, 5% block rate. He's drawing 5 fouls per 40. We do know Baycott can get a little aggressive at times, pick up an offensive charge over the back. We see him do that, foul trouble stuff in the first half, but he typically doesn't foul out all that much. And we've seen him play, 29 to 32 minutes pretty consistently the last month or so of the season in conference play. So that's really huge to see. And as far as pay-ups go, he's definitely going to be the one that I'm really excited about. NC State defensive rebounding is 302nd in the country. Their offensive rebounding efficiency is a little better. They're 68th in the country, but dealing with Baycott, they're going to get owned on the glass time and time again. So we want to make sure that we can find the salary for him. We want to start our lineups with him. As far as, with core, I usually like to have like a mid-range guy, a pay up, and then a value I give you. It's just what's more productive. So you can consider Baycott at 9-1 your pay up core in all formats. I would be shocked if he doesn't have just a monster double-double, something similar to what just happened for him in their last game against Boston College when he had 18 rebounds. The game before that against Virginia Tech, he had 20. He's doing his best Oscar Tshiebwe, a move. And in that game against BC, he scored 6 actual points, but still had 35 fantasy points. So that just tells you how comfortable you can be with the kid who's going to own the glass, going to block shots. So that's your pay up play in all formats. Run him. He'll be high owned, but I don't care. Brady Manick at 8-1 is pretty sickening to consider. I do think he has some appeal on just a purely a matchup standpoint. 3 games ago against Wake Forest, he took 17 shots. We know Dawson Garcia is out. He's dealing with some family matters. I don't know if he had a death in the family or something, but he's taking care of that. So Manick is not having to share that 10 to 18 minute range that Garcia would typically get. He's just getting to play the entire time for him and thus playing 34, 35, minutes. So he definitely has appeal in GPPs. It's just the sticker shock of that 8-1 price is kind of, makes you want to shudder a little bit. I am interested in RJ Davis at 6'8". I have some interest in Caleb Love at 7K. I think that this game, just on a pure pace standpoint and defensively, both of these teams giving up so many fantasy points, I think we could see them really thrive. RJ Davis has been a really hard one to peg. He'll have those games where he'll put up 40. He'll have those games where he puts up 15. This is a game, though, that I could see him really, putting up a big number. So I like him for GPPs as well. Caleb Love has cooled off a little bit this month after a strong start to the season. He did have a nice 22-2-5 game against Virginia Tech, but we've seen a couple of games where he's been between 15 to 20 fantasy points. So I certainly am not ready to play him in my main just yet, but I think he deserves some consideration. And then value-wise, because Dawson Garcia has been out, Manick absorbing a lot of those minutes, but it's also led to Leaky Black. The return of Leaky Black, who was completely written off this season, barely playing, just having some confidence issues, not fitting in with the new system for Coach Hubert. And now the last 2 games, he's played 34 and 38 minutes. He's making shots. Leaky's not known as a shot maker. And if you watch North Carolina games, they sag off of him to a disrespectful level. I mean, just imagine getting the ball, those of you that played, and the defense just falls into the middle of the paint, daring you to shoot. I mean, it's going to be upsetting. So the fact that he made, 2 for 4 from long range the other day has to feel good for him. Made a couple jumpers against BC the other day. Still not taking volume, but when those shots are there, he's starting to take them. He's always been a guy that contributes in other categories such as rebounds, blocks, and steals. He's starting to do that again. Back-to-back 27 fantasy point games. So at 4-7, Leaky Black is definitely a guy to consider. I like him better than Bingham. I feel a little more confident in him than Bingham for 600 more. I think he'll be lesser owned than Bingham, and I think the matchup's just a lot better because he'll be able to take advantage of the rebounding as well. Baycott, will have to take a water break even if he were to, get 20 rebounds. There's still going to be plenty to go around for everybody else because of this matchup. Leaky Black could end up, with an 8 rebound game himself. So right now I'm looking at it from a main team standpoint of running like Baycott and Leaky Black together. GPPs like a Manic RJ Davis together. Different combos, different strokes you can feel good about. For NC State, Darian Sebron, I mentioned him earlier. He has been an absolute stud all season long. The fact that he's under 9K has to put him in your crosshairs at least slightly, just because we're getting a little bit of a discount for him. He's a guy that we know can put up 40, 28% usage rate this year, 20% defensive rebounding rate, 10% offensive rebounding rate, 21% assist rate, draws 5.5 fouls per 40. He's going to do a lot of damage. That Notre Dame game was a struggle for pretty much everybody on the Wolfpack, but Sebron scored 21 real points, and he and especially in the second half, took over and started trying to lead them back. They fell short. My guy, Turk Smith, had a bad game, and Sebron had to produce that offense. So he's a guy to look at. I do want to consider going back to Turquavian Smith, affectionately call him Turk, at just 6'8". Anytime he's under 7K, I think you want to consider him. He has been a really strong scorer this season. He does have a 28% shot rate, which is highest on the team, 24% usage rate. He is going to be heavily reliant on scoring, but he does such a good job. And on defense, he does have a 3% steal rate, so he will contribute in those other categories. He's making 36% of his threes. So if you want a North Carolina State run back, because I know you FTN guys love your run backs in mini stacks, Turk Smith is the guy to consider at 6'8" over Sebron, just 2K discount. He's not going to put up the high ceiling that Sebron will, but he'll get that 30 to 35 score like a Cam Thomas. He has a lot of Cam Thomas similarities as well for that same reason. Jericho Helms at 7'2". He's okay. He's kind of one of those safer plays, not a lot of upside usually, but I'm okay with it if you want to go that route. And then value-wise, you have Ebenezer Duwana, who I mentioned earlier in the show, a guy that doesn't shoot the ball at all, but he has a high block rate. He rebounds well at 3.7. His usage rate is just non-existent. It's kind of laughable at 8.8%, but he does have an 8% block rate. He's a 9.5% offensive rebounding rate. 6'11", 225 kid that's going to do a lot of damage in the painted area. If he gets an offensive rebound, he will put it back, but they're not drawing up any offensive plays for him. A little trappy of a value play at times this year. We are asking him to come down and guard, the likes of Baycott. I don't like that. That scares me quite a bit, especially when his foul rate's, pushing that 5 fouls per 40. It's pretty obvious on the road that he's going to get into foul trouble, so just be a little careful with him. He's more of a GPP value. If you're just looking to kind of, diversify your builds, I'm fine with Ebby, but he's not a main team play. Same thing with Cam Hayes at 3.3. I know he had a nice scoring game last time out, but he was the freshman last year that everybody thought was going to be a stud this year, and he just hasn't worked out. So Sebron and Helms are okay, but really Turk Smith is our guy here. Stack away. All right, next game, Xavier and Creighton. We have ourselves a game that I don't have a lot of interest in. Just reading my page. Hold on. All right, we're going to talk Ken Palm. I don't have the odds up for whatever reason, but Ken Palm has it 70 to 69 in favor of Xavier. Creighton 203 in Temple ranking, Xavier 82. As far as plays go, Xavier, the price is up on Jack Nungy at 8K, so I think we can safely probably avoid him. It is worth noting that he started last game, which typically when he's playing, 25-ish or more minutes, he has been a really solid play over the last 2 seasons, even dating back to Iowa. And you'll see last game against Providence, he put up almost 40 in that 32 minutes as a starter. So it wouldn't surprise me at all to see him, if he plays 30-ish minutes again here, to put up a big number, or at the very least put up something like a 28 to 29, floor. So I definitely don't want to write him off at 8K, but at the same time, if he weren't to start, he's still not a priority on the road against Creighton. He has to deal with an interior that's led by Ryan Kalkbrenner, who is just a blocking machine. So I'm not prioritizing him, but he's not a bad play. He's a very high FPPM guy, fantasy point per minute. For those of you who are new watching the show, I appreciate you guys. A few of you let me know already tonight. Nunge is I think a high level GPP guy at this point. Fremantle at 6'3". I'll be curious to see what his ownership is like, because people are really, he's one that people don't want to miss out the explosion game. And last time against Creighton in 33 minutes of action, it was one of his best games of the season, actually. 16 shot attempts, 13 points, 11 rebounds, put up 31 fantasy points. Definitely worth considering. Against Providence, he took 11 shots, had over 21 fantasy points. So the price dip from 7K to 6'3" is certainly intriguing. Starting him next to Nunge is certainly intriguing. I like that for Xavier. That gives them a little bit more upside within their lineup. They're definitely going to want, guys on the perimeter like Nate Johnson to get more involved, but they're not getting as much as they were from like DeJuan Odom earlier in the season. Adam Conkle has always been hit or miss. Jerome Hunter has really not given them a whole lot on offense, and I think that's why he finally got bumped to the bench by Jack Nunge. And then Colby Jones has really, kind of been like the best player on the floor at times, and then he's just been completely invisible in others. So Xavier's just looking for some shred of consistency, and I think that's going to come from Nunge and Fremantle when he figures things out. As far as rates go, Nunge has a 23.3% usage rate, Scruggs 23.5%, Colby Jones 20%. You're looking at Nunge, 22.5% defensive rebounding rate, very strong, 11.5% offensive rebounding rate. Fremantle has a 25% combined. Still working things out. He missed time at the beginning. What people don't realize is Colby Jones has been one of the better rebounders on the team as well, a combined rate of nearly 30%. So Colby Jones, while his price is a little bit higher than people will typically be willing to pay, he has a higher floor just because he rebounds so well. But he is the type of kid that he needs to see those first, 1, 2, 3 shots go down at the beginning. If he doesn't, he kind of drags ass a little bit on defense. I have noticed that watching an extreme amount of Xavier games on FS1. So I like Colby Jones. I like Nunge. I like Fremantle. I think they're mostly GPP guys for me, even though I think we'll probably run into Fremantle in our cash games. Our opponents will have, a lot of Zach Fremantle. So let me see where we're at here. Okay, so next game, or wait, I'm going too fast. Creighton, sorry. So Creighton side, prices are pretty fair, I think, at this point, finally, on Creighton. Ryan Kalkbrenner at 8.6. That's going to be tough to pay up. I did use him against DePaul. Surprisingly, he was pretty low owned there, put up 47. Had a rough game for him last time out against Butler, 10 points, 4 rebounds, but the 5 block shots allowed him to still have 25. Last time out against Xavier, he had a solid 8-5-4 game with 5 blocks for 31 fantasy points. Obviously, at this price at 8.6, you want to see a much higher amount, a ceiling that is going to make you feel a little more comfortable, a little more confident, right? So I don't think we're using him in our main build or prioritizing him at that price point, but knowing he's going to be low owned, you can definitely, consider him for your, main builds, or sorry, your GPP builds, large field stuff. If you're max entering the, mania bracket, that type of thing. If you can get Kalkbrenner at 5%, I think even in a matchup that's kind of mediocre like this, it's worth exploring. The rest of Creighton guys, as I mentioned, their prices are all up finally. Nemhard at 5.4. We don't have to jam him in. He's had some pretty rough games recently. Alex O'Connell at 7.5. He's just a shooter. It's kind of hard to pay that price. Ryan Hawkins at 7.1. That's a fair price. I think we're mainly looking at Arthur Kaluma at 4.7. We've had some nice games from Kaluma, especially recently. I did not use him last time out. Was the Butler game. I think the last time I used him was actually against St. John's when he came through for almost 30 fantasy points for us because he's priced at 3.3. Now we're looking at almost 5K price point. Last time out against Xavier in 27 minutes, he had a right around 16 fantasy points, which is fine. At this price now, though, we're going to need closer to 20. He's playing pretty solid 25 to 28 minutes. We saw him against Butler play 35, which is phenomenal. and his fouls, the last 3, we'll knock on this piece of wood here, have been under, 3. So if he can keep his fouls in check, he's starting to get confidence. We've seen him take double-digit shots in 2 of his last 3. I definitely feel like Arthur Kaluma is a rather high-level value option here that I think is going to be semi-chalky, but I think people are going to try to talk themselves out of it just because it's Xavier and they have a reputation for being such a nightmarish defense in the post. But I think he can do well here. I don't feel like on the road Xavier is going to be engaged enough to necessarily just shut him down or make his life difficult. So that's kind of how I feel about Kaluma. But the rest of this game I think is mostly just GPP for me. All right, Indiana versus Maryland. Let's go, Maryland DVP. So Indiana -1.5. Total of 135.5. Maryland 201 Temple ranking. Indiana 172. And we know that every time Maryland is on the slate, we can target them with interior players, whether that's at the 4 or the 5, guys who can do majority of their damage on the glass, in the painted area, on the block, however you want to phrase it. And the Hoosiers happen to have several options that can take advantage of that. Obviously, it starts with Trayce Jackson-Davis, a premium pay-up option that you can definitely consider. He is going to wreak havoc on this Maryland team. At 8.8, I think that I'm getting exposure. Will he end up in my main build? I'm not sure because I don't know that he's going to be hitting that like 45 to 50 that you really would need in the larger field stuff. We saw it last time out the slate when he was super chalky and he got his 35, 36. I think that's probably where we'll still end up seeing him, even though it is Maryland and this is a spot to really just destroy. I just feel like the other options on the Hoosiers take a little bit or take enough away from him to kind of keep his massive ceiling from hitting. But I think at this price, he's still hitting 4.5x, especially in 35 minutes, we'll say. So he's in play. I'm a Race Thompson fan. I would love to play Race Thompson. Unfortunately, he just put up 30 against Penn State, so that caused his price to kind of rise again. So he's up over 7K. Race's minutes typically are in that mid-20s, which makes it hard to get behind this price, but it is Maryland. It is a spot where, just continually we can target against. Last time out, Maryland played Rutgers, right? And I ended up having quite a bit of Clifford Omarui, even though he was priced up over 6K, just because I'm such a believer in that matchup. And he had 13 and 11, which ended up being great, and it kept that DVP going. So I do think Race could end up putting up like just 10 real points, but 13 rebounds, some kind of stat line like that. Get a couple blocks in there and do some damage for us, and we'll feel pretty good about it. So I think he's in play. I don't know yet if I'm going to end up using him in my main build. Looking at his rebounding rates, they're extremely strong. Combined rates of 30%, 20.6% of that on the defensive side. Trayce Jackson has almost identical rebounding rates, 20.9% defensive rebounding rate, 30% combined. So both of them are gonna own the glass. It is worth noting that Rob Finney, the DFS enigma that can just put up 30 randomly when you least expect it, is out. So that is going to open up some potential value around the guard spots. Parker Stewart, Trey Galloway, maybe a little Miller Kopp. They're just very low level values, the Indiana guys. I think I would be most interested in Parker Stewart just because I think he's going to play a lot of minutes, but I'm not interested in him for my main build because he could play 30 minutes and actually come away with just 5 fantasy points. So it's a really low level spot for him and guys who, and that's one of those times where you can say, well, the additional minutes for this guy may not matter because he's just going to stand around waiting to shoot threes. Maybe he gets hot from 3, like Alajiki from Cal yesterday. But all he's going to do is stand there and take 3. So that's kind of tough to get behind. I really just want to take advantage of TJD or Race Thompson. Maryland side, Donta Scott at 7.9, Fats Russell at 7.4, Eric Ayala at 7.2 are all priced where they should be, maybe even a tad overpriced. So I'm not looking at them, even though the Indiana defense does not scare me. Where I think we're looking is Julian Reese and Quidus Wahab, who are both under 4K. The problem is in true frustrating fashion, they split the minutes at the 5, the 4, in the interior. So they end up playing between 15 to 20 real minutes, and then they'll ride the hot hand. Like last time it was Wahab, he ended up playing 24 minutes. Game before that, it was Reese who played 23 minutes. So I don't know that we can use them in our main build, especially going up against a front court like Trayce Jackson-Davis, who is one of the best at drawing fouls, and Race Thompson, who does a fine job of that too. Wahab it's screaming early foul trouble for him, and probably like 16 minutes. So even at the 3.5 price tag, I'm not sure that he's going to score enough to really matter. Julian Reese would be the one I would probably rather play. Like if he were to start, I think I'd consider him. So we'll have to see, who starts between Wahab and Reese, because I think that's where my interest would be. Because I think Reese can stay on the floor and is a little more disciplined, even though he's younger than Wahab. He's shown himself to have a higher ceiling as well. So we'll have to see how that lands, or how that ends up with the starting lineup. But Trayce Jackson-Davis draws over 6.5 fouls per 40, which is a top 50 rate. So he is very difficult to target against for that reason. All right, Arizona State versus Arizona. We have blowout city here. Minus 22 over total for Arizona, over under of 145.5. They're second in tempo ranking, Arizona State 151. I made the comment this morning in Discord because Chet Holmgren, even in a blowout yesterday, ended up playing late into the game. The comment I make, and I say it a lot, is in college basketball, blowouts are extremely overrated. A lot of times coaches are paranoid. They have to get these big margin of victories so that they get, higher in the net rankings, all this stuff. And one team that does, strangely enough, and a disciple from Gonzaga with Coach Lloyd, does sit guys in blowouts is Arizona. And they've done that pretty consistently. We've seen, Benedict Mathurin, when they blow a team out, he's pretty much kind of in that 3x, 25 fantasy point mark. But when they're in a closer game, he puts up a huge score. And I know that's contradictory for what just happened, or if they get blown out, which doesn't happen very often. I mean, the last game against UCLA, they got just absolutely throttled. But he had to play a lot because, they're down, Tubelis is banged up. He had 16 points, 10 rebounds for 37.5 fantasy points in 34 minutes. So I should say close game, or if Arizona is getting blown out, which rarely happens. I think that was the first time all season. Definitely don't see Arizona State blowing them out. I definitely see Arizona blowing them out. So I'm a little worried about his overall production. I'm kind of worried about all the guys, even, Koloko and some of these other guys' production, even though the prices on Arizona guys are chef's kiss attractive, especially on Christian Koloko at 7.2. I think we'll probably see quite a bit of ownership on him, and for good reason. He's somebody that I want to have in my lineup at that price point. But, do I think he's going to play 31, 32 minutes? No. He's going to play 22 to 23, 24. So he's going to have to do it, in shorter minutes. And his fantasy points per minutes number is pretty high. You see against Utah in a 24-minute game, he had 31 fantasy points. And then you'll see in a game where he played 27 minutes against Cal, he had 43 fantasy points. So under 30 minutes isn't a death sentence for him. Against Northern Colorado in 28 minutes, he had 37. So it's definitely possible. Arizona State is just a joke of a team. Bobby Hurley is a joke of a coach. His brother is much better than him. They can't rebound. They're 268th in defensive rebounding efficiency. They're 262nd in offensive rebounding efficiency. They are a very easy team to target against. But like I said, we just have to keep in mind that I think the Arizona stack is out of play. I think we're just playing one Arizona guy in our main, and that's it. I really do. Kind of similar to, maybe the Buffalo situation tonight, not in that the game will be the same or play out, but just that the production, I think, will not warrant stacking them. We thought it would today with Buffalo, and it wasn't. But I think that Koloko is really the guy that we want to play here. And then, leave the Mathurin, Creasa stacks to everyone else. I just don't see Creasa going for 5x. I'll eat my words if I have to, but I just don't see it. So Koloko is my guy at 7-2. I think he'll own ASU pretty hard. We did see Tubelis play 15 minutes against UCLA. He looked really good. 8 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal. He put up 20 fantasy points in that 15 minutes. So main thing is he hasn't been practicing. Did read that on their beat writers reports on Twitter. So we'll see. Probably won't start. If he does end up playing, we're likely looking at a sub 20-minute outing for him again, and they likely won't need him. Now, if Tubelis doesn't play, that does make things, even in a blowout, more appealing for Arizona, because that's 15 to 25 minutes for Tubelis that are going to have to go to someone else. Omar Bala would have been the sneak of the slate, but they priced him way up to 5.7. He's actually up over almost 2K since just last week. So while I think he's going to put up like a 22, 24 fantasy point score in this matchup, I just don't know how we can use him at 5.7. They've priced him out of play for us. You can look at Pele Larson at 4.3 with Tubelis banged up. He is a value guy that you can consider because his minutes are still very strong. He's played 33 minutes in 2 of his last 3 games. As far as fantasy points go, he's kind of hovering around that mid 15, 16 point mark, but at 4.4, if he gives us 16, we're not feeling that bad about it. Creasa I think he's going to be popular at 5.3. My buddy Kurt on Twitter was talking about how he's going to be all in on him. He's just a low level DFS option, and that might confuse some of you because I was all about Kerr Kriisa last year. He's 3.2, 3.5, and coming off the bench, and the staff loved him, and I would try to jam him in there and hope to catch a 20 fantasy point game. And now this year, I just don't find myself liking him very much, and it may have to do with the fact that he talks a lot of trash to my Huskies. I don't know. But I don't think if he's going to be like 55% owned or some crazy number, he feels like an easy fade to me personally. I would rather just find the money to go Koloko or go down and play Larson, or maybe even Dallin Terry, who everybody's going to be down on, but I could see, Sale 20 plus fantasy points here as maybe the direct pivot from Creasa. And then as far as Mathurin goes, like I said, in blowouts, I feel like I'm off Mathurin in blowouts. So with this being a projected blowout, I think I'm pulling back on him, hoping he scores 25 as opposed to 45. I was a dynasty owner of Mathurin for quite a while. Did trade him recently for some other stuff, but knowing that about him, I've watched most of his games or paid attention to him because of the dynasty. So that's been the case with him all season long. On the Arizona State side, we are looking at a lot of just trash. Jay Heath was suspended 1 game for his part in that bumping a ref. So that's over. So I would imagine he plays. Kimani Lawrence has been dealing with, and this has been going around my house too, the non-COVID illness. We've been seeing that a lot. So he's been sick. They have Alonzo Gaffney, who's one of their secondary players, plays around mid-20s minutes. And he's actually been starting. It sounds like he's highly doubtful for this game / not playing. So they're likely going to be a little shorthanded here. So guys are going to have to play big minutes. You've got the Marion Jackson, who is starting to look like the Marion Jackson of old, that Toledo version that was, putting up big fantasy totals. His last 2 games, he's been hovering right around 30 fantasy points at 6K. He's going to have to take a ton of shots. We saw against USC in a blowout, he took 18 shots, 12 of which were 3s. So he's going to have to, shoulder the load a little bit. You have DJ Horn at 5'9", who's going to have to play big minutes. He's actually been one of the more consistent options on the team. Jalen Graham has started to look and hit some of that upside / potential that he showed last year. He has 4 straight games of 20 plus fantasy points. I don't think he's going to do well against that Arizona front court though. And then you have Luther Muhammad at 3-3, who, may be asked to play bigger minutes here with Gaffney and maybe, Lawrence. I realize he's a guard and those guys are wings / forwards, but they're looking like they're going to have to go small ball. They don't have a lot of players at their disposal. They're going to play him before they play some walk-ons. So I think we could see kind of a smaller ASU lineup, which makes Koloko even more of a better play. And then like 25, 28 minutes from Luther Muhammad at 3-3. Luther Muhammad's probably worth considering. You'll look at his logs and you're going to find 9 shots, 6, 11, 4 over his last 4 games. So Arizona State's looking for answers, not finding a lot of them, but there is Luther Muhammad who had shown some productivity during his time at Ohio State. Is shooting a lot. So at 3-3, I think we could definitely consider him, maybe a lower end value at that, but he doesn't have to do a lot. Arizona pulls their foot off the gas a little bit in the second half, and Muhammad's out there for the last 6 to 7 minutes just chucking recklessly. You could pay that 3-3 off. He can get 15 fantasy points and maybe even push beyond that. So I like Muhammad. I think that Marion Jackson is worth considering as well. All right, last game on the slate is Virginia Tech versus FSU. The Seminoles. Oh, I should have worn my FSU jersey, man. Right before the show, my daughter had a lava lamp nearly fall on her, and there was a whole incident beforehand. That's why I was a little bit late, so I couldn't think clearly about wearing the jersey, but I should have. Damn. FSU though, minus 2.5 point favorites, 132.5 total. 194 tempo ranking for them. Virginia Tech 343. This is a game with a low total. It's the hammer game that I know everybody's obsessed with, myself included. Back in the day, I call myself the reformed late game hammer user now, but I do have interest in this game. I think it's going to be a bit on the ugly side, but these are two teams that thrive in that game environment because they have guys who are solid on the glass. They have guys who can steal the ball. They have guys who can protect the rim and block shots. On the FSU side, we know Malik Osborne is out for the season, which is terribly sad, dealing with an ankle injury. That does lower. I never like to see a guy get injured. So before I talk my next sentence, I don't want everyone to be like, oh, this guy's hoping people get hurt for DFS. That's not the case. That happens. Now that it happens, we have to look at, taking advantage of it. We know Leonard Hamilton plays a deep rotation. Now he has one of his better, top 3 players out of the mix for the season. That rotation is likely to forcibly shrink a little bit or thrust others into bigger roles. We're also looking at Caleb Mills possibly missing the game. He was only able to play 19 minutes against Georgia Tech, and the reason is he has strep throat / I even read today on some boards that he may have mono. I think somebody's just running with that, and that's maybe not the case, but that's definitely going to affect you. Anyone who has had strep throat or mono, I've been lucky to not have mono, but I have a buddy who did, and it did not seem pleasant. So playing at a high level with that going on is quite tough. So the price on this young man I'm going to mention is not appealing at all, but the role, the minutes, the usage that I expect him to absorb is, and that's Matthew Cleveland, a guy that we have been on kind of a little bit earlier than everybody else, and we've been able to reap the benefits on that at times. He's jumped all the way up to 6-7 now, even though the last 2 games have been pretty mediocre. The game against North Florida, which was a non-con game they played a week ago, he had 21 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists for 44. So it shows against lesser competition, he can get it going. We need to see it against upper tier competition. This is it. We're going to see him play. I feel really good about him playing 30-ish minutes. If Mills is, and that's with Mills, I'm going to put it right now and say that's with Mills. If Mills is out, we could see him play more. Now, keep in mind, Coach Leonard Hamilton is not above playing walk-ons or deep bench guys just to continue having his 12-man rotation. He's very committed to it. So I do want to make sure you guys understand that, but I think that Matthew Cleveland with expected lower ownership and a higher role is a guy to consider. He's not going to project well in anybody's projections. He's not going to be popping up in any optos. this is just one of those plays where you got to use your brain and think 30 minutes for a player with, let's pull up his rates here so you guys can see. A guy that's going to put up some points. Rates wise, he is second highest on the team in shot rate at 26.7%, right behind Caleb Mills at 27%. So if you remove Mills from the equation, he's probably going to sail over 30. His usage rate is highest on the team at 25%. Mills right behind him at 24.9, basically the same. And then Cleveland's rebounding rate is which really is impressive for me. 17.5% defensive rebounding rate, 8.5% offensive rebounding rate, and he draws 5 fouls per 40. The threes haven't been there for him yet. He's not a good shooter like Mills is, but he does a lot of other things, and he does a lot of damage on the secondary category. So I just see him being thrust into a bigger role the rest of the way. Anthony Polite, I'm curious to see if people go there. I could, at 6'4", he's a little cheaper than Cleveland. I could definitely see people that's a lot more of a known commodity, or people are more comfortable with Polite. He doesn't have the wide range of outcomes that Cleveland has had. He's kind of just chugs along with that 18 to 23 fantasy point line, and that's what he gives you. He doesn't necessarily give you any more, but he won't give you any less. So people are comfortable with that. I also like Rayquan Evans at 5'3". If Mills is out, you see 4 of his last 5, he's played 27 plus minutes. He's only scored 20 plus fantasy points in 2 of those games. He's kind of fallen off a little bit the last couple. But again, another guy that is going to be thrust into a bigger role, more usage and more minutes. And he's been a very strong defender for them. He blocks shots, gets steals. Both of those rates are over 3%. So he's somebody that's going to be on the floor for his defensive prowess at minimum. And then last game, we saw Jalen Warley start against Georgia Tech. He's 3'7", played 21 minutes as a starter there, 6 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. Definitely a guy to consider. If the Cleveland price is uncomfortable for you, I'm okay with you not following me there. But I do think you maybe want to consider, going the value route with Florida State and taking a Jalen Warley who, without Mills, would probably see, 25-ish minutes, especially as a starter. So those are the guys to really look at. They do have, with Osborne out, there's also some potential additional minutes for the 7-foot freshman, John Butler, 7'1". He's only 190, so he's got the thinner frame, but 20% rebounding rate, a 7% or 6% block rate, does have a 5 fouls per 40 rate called on him. You expect that for a 7-footer at time, but Butler, he's shown some flashes, and we know Hamilton loves his big, so Butler's going to keep getting minutes, I think. Saw last game 23, a couple games before that 18, against Duke 27. So Butler at 3'3" has some GPP appeal, because I do think they're going to need his size to go up against guys like Justin Mutz and Kiva Luma on the Virginia Tech side. So expect some additional minutes for him. And then Cameron Fletcher, the transfer, he does not he was getting some minutes off the bench there earlier in the season. He doesn't fit this system very well at all. He gets beat on the defensive side a lot. I've noticed watching their game. Offensively, he's pretty decent, shooting almost 40% from long range, 22% shot rate. But yeah, defensively, he gets burned quite a bit. So I think that's why his minutes are down. Just, kind of looking at the logs and watching the games. That's what I've determined. I'm on some Florida State guys here. I think this is a really good spot to target them. Virginia Tech has been a team with a reputation for being a strong defense, and they've certainly done that. But they've given up some big stat lines, recently too. We saw Caleb Love score 22 against them. Baycott that was the game where he had 20 rebounds against them. The Miami game that they just lost 78-75. We saw my man Jordan Miller put up 18 and 7. Cameron McGusty 19 and 7. So there's some big stat lines coming up against this guy. They even lost just recently an embarrassing loss to Boston College 68-63. James Karnick had 26 real points and 9 rebounds. So and Mal had 18. So they're really ailing right now. This is a team that earlier in the season you didn't want to target against because they were holding teams under 65 real points. Now 3 in a row they've given up 68 plus real points. So I think on the road, limping into this one, we could see the Seminoles put up some decent stat lines. On the Virginia Tech side, prices have come down a few hundred, so not super steep, but Kiva Luma at 7.7 is interesting. Justin Mutz at 7-3 with Osborne out. They're going to be able to deal with some more younger bigs on the Florida State side, guys who are more raw. So I think we could see them put up a decent number. Mutz is a really interesting / intriguing GPP play. At the 7-3 tag, he is a guy that when you expect him to do well or he has a good matchup, he kind of fades. But when he has a mediocre matchup, he's excelled. And actually 4 of his last 5, he scored over 30 fantasy points. And again, he's done that pretty quietly because nobody's really talking about it. His rebounding rate has been what has really kind of dominated the last few games. He has a 22.4% defensive rebounding rate and 9.5% offensive rebounding rate. So I like him quite a bit for GPPs. I don't know that I would use him here in my main lineup. Last game out against Miami, 9 points, 10 rebounds, 8 assists, damn near triple-double. The game before that, 18 points, 10 rebounds, and he's had a couple 7s, 9s. He had a 12 earlier on the glass. So a very strong rebounder. He's somebody that I kind of actually like better than Aluma. Aluma would be more of a cash option, more steady. Mutz has those wide range of outcomes, but his upside has been pretty strong recently. And then those value guys like Naheem Ali, Storm Murphy, Hunter Couture, they're all kind of just lower level options. They're going to get minutes. We know that. They're going to average between 28 to 34 minutes, but they have very low floors, especially Storm Murphy has a single digit floor. But if he gets hot from long range, we can see him put up 20. He's only 3.7. I would rather play Worley if he started on the other side of this game at 3.7 over Storm Murphy. So I really think that I'll probably just be fading Virginia Tech with some in my main, and then have some Justin Mutz, exposure in my alt builds. So core-wise, we are talking about Isaiah Brockington of Iowa State. I think that's just, kind of a gimme. Armando Bacot of North Carolina, also a gimme, 2 plays. And then the values are going to be tough because I think Christian Coloco would be the true, when I release my article, would be the 3rd member of that core. I think Coloco is where I'm going to plant my flag for Arizona exposure. With the value plays being so hit or miss on this particular slate, I think I will say my core for value is going to be not Bingham. I think a lot of people would be expecting Bingham as that 3rd member, but I'm going to say Luther Muhammad would be my 3rd core from a value standpoint. They will not be my listed core in the article, but I just like to give you guys another one at the price point. Posh play is going to be my man from Tulane, Jaylen Cook, at 8K. Don't expect a lot of ownership on him, but I think he could have a really big game against Wichita State. And then you can expect to see a lot of Bo Hodges. I also will have some Bo Hodges. So kind of gives you an idea where my head is at for this particular slate. As far as FanDuel goes, because I know I have some FanDuel followers, subs, listeners, all that good stuff. Let me pull up their site real quick. Give you a couple guys. LSU is on the slate versus TCU. LSU had a different starting lineup last time out. They started Justice Williams, Alex Fudge, guys like that. Alex Fudge is only 3.4 on FanDuel, so you can put him in your core. Because FanDuel, it's always been over the years, FanDuel, sometimes you can take a bagel at 3K and still cash because you're able to fit in all these upper tier plays. So Alex Fudge, Armando Bacot, the first 2 of my core, and then looking at it price-wise, or just, good play overall, Terry Eason at 7K. If Darius Days were to be out yet again, my man Terry Eason will tear up / chew up and spit out TCU. So you FanDuel guys, there's the FanDuel freebie. Let's pull up PrizePicks. We've been doing really well on PrizePicks. PrizePicks unleashed for CBB the combo, which is points, assists, rebounds. That has been a real moneymaker for us. We've been hitting that quite consistently. Today's combos were a little tight, so we looked elsewhere. But let's see on this slate. I'm going to start with the combo plays. And it's important to notice too, if you take a rebound or an assist category by itself, you will get, that extra. So like 1.5, 1.2 on the combo. Obviously points are 1, but on combo, rebounds and assists, they're also worth 1. So it does change the strategy a little bit. You're just getting each statistic as a 1 point, but I still have been able to really find some lower numbers like 23.5, 22.5 on players who, damn near scored 30 real a lot. So we've been able to find some soft numbers and run with those. So starting with the combos, right away, I see one that I like, Jack Nungy at 20.5. Somebody that I could see, putting up like a 17 and 11 type of number, double, even though we said his price was a little high on PrizePicks. We're not worried about prices. So 20.5, over 20.5 combo points on Jack Nunge. That is my dude. Looking at Isaiah Brockington, 16.5 real points. I like over 16.5 versus Missouri. I like Brockington for a 20 plus, real point game. I think he's going to do a lot of scoring. So sign me up for that. He's going to be a big time producer for us. And then let's do rebounds. Terry Eason over 7 rebounds. That has been a number that PrizePicks never changes for Eason on his rebounding. It's hit at a basically an 80% clip, especially if Darius Days is out / limited. Terry Eason will be controlling the glass all to himself, so I would expect 10 plus rebounds from him. I will go over 7 rebounds for Terry Eason. So that is the PrizePicks. As I mentioned, also, I will be doing an article / write-up for the afternoon slate and the night slate on DraftKings. So you'll have 3 different pieces of content to look at. I'll be around in the Discord for most of the main slate. However, the Discord, I won't be around much for those other 2 slates. That's why I'm providing you with the write-ups. My son does have his last basketball game of the season, so I will be this later in the afternoon at that. And unable to answer my phone much. Also, you can expect as far as shows go, you can expect Monday night show for the Tuesday slate. I'll get back on to having guests, so I'm not doing all the talking. I'm sure you guys are getting tired of hearing just me. And then possibly, depending on the slate on Sunday, we'll maybe be looking at doing a show tomorrow night. But otherwise, Monday night and Friday night, those for the rest of the season, shows on those 2 days guaranteed. Once again, if you're not a part of FTN, get over to ftndaily.com. Check out the pricing. We do have a gold package, which is all niche sports, esports, tennis, all the collegiate stuff. Use that code DUB and get yourself 20% off. And we're unique. We offer that 20% off for the duration of your sub. It's not just the first month. So I always say this, and I didn't say it yet today, so you're going to have to bear with me. The Discord alone is worth the price of the sub, because we are, not only talking strategy, but we're posting starting lineups in there. When there's late breaking news, we see it, not even if it's just a tweet, but message boards, or we're tweeting beat writers, whatever, DMs. We're getting that information, and we're able to, get it to our subs. And all of a sudden, a guy that's been out, 2 minutes to lock, he's out. We get it to our subs, and he's 35% owned on the slate. We're able to, pivot off of him. So that is where the, edge in the game really lies. Last night with Tristan Da Silva, I didn't happen to be around. Our subs stepped in and let each other know that he was out, and they made some pivots, swaps, and they had a really big night yesterday. So it's not just Mike and myself or Stills, but our actual community is one of the best for sure. So I appreciate everybody who watched live. We are going to get out of here. Did good. So big slate, $25 Mania bracket tomorrow. Make sure you guys are trying your hand at that. And best of luck. I appreciate everybody who continues to support the show. And I will see you guys next time. Thanks.